Well, good Tuesday morning. I'm Jeff Kocman.
And I'm Debra Pinkerton. Welcome to Morning Light.
Well, when politics operates in overtime, the pressure is on to make a deal. The budget showdowns in both Harrisburg and Washington are putting the spotlight on some rising tensions. This morning, I'll ask the Morning Light panel to talk about what it means to fight like a believer, to engage these public policy issues with civility and grace. And we'll have someone with some firsthand experience on the panel to talk about it this morning.
But first, here's a preview of what's coming up later in the show. The November election is right around the corner, but it's not too late to register to vote. We will tell you what offices are on the November ballot. And a pastor will talk about what the Bible has to say about casting your vote.
Do your duty.
That's right.
That's right. Well, in Harrisburg and Washington, the inability of Republicans and Democrats to reach an agreement on budgets has revealed some frayed nerves and strained relationships. So last week, a debate on the floor of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives got a little heated. Fingers were pointing, a mess of words, accusations flew back and forth across the aisle, crossing that invisible dividing line separating Republicans from Democrats and dancing on the edge of the ancient rules of debate. Some of those from Thomas Jefferson, so they go way back.
And we certainly see a lot of this actually in our nation's capital when we're watching sessions.
And not just politicians. Right.
That's right. Representative Scott Barger from Altoona and Representative Malcolm Kenyatta from Philadelphia apparently got into a heated exchange off camera. A social media firestorm ignited.
And I've read some of those emails that Representative Barger received, and they are extraordinary for the rudeness and the vulgarity of it. This is not a fun time to be in public service. So what do you do when you believe your message was misunderstood or taken out of context? Do you lay low? Do you fight back? And here's a most important question, perhaps, as a Christian. What does it actually mean to fight, to engage like a believer? Representative Scott Barger has not spoken publicly about what happened this week on the floor of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, at least until now. And Representative Barger is joined by our friend Alex Kocman. Gentlemen, glad to have you. Alex, are you ready to run for office now after seeing all this?
I may need to.
Fun stuff.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm sure.
So you're a first-term member. This incident happened last week, and first, your conception of what it was going to be like. We have an idea, I think, looking outside in, visiting the Capitals, going into the balcony, looking down at people, and there's a sense that this is all a very dignified process. But when you are hungry, when you are tired, when it is late night, it changes the atmosphere, doesn't it? Tell me a little bit about, take us in or on the floor of the House for those evenings and long days.
Yeah, there's a lot of frustration when, especially when you have no control to affect any change. It's not my decision what bills are being run or how we will attack problems. And yet we get a lot of calls from back home. Hey, why isn't the budget passed? My preschool can't open up.
Yeah.
Our funding is drying up. Who's going to save us? Can you save us? Well,
yeah.
I want to save them, but I can't because it's not up to me. So
right.
You walk into a room and every member on that House floor, I believe, is experiencing some version of that frustration. Pressure from home to get things done.
So it's supercharged already.
But as soon as you walk in, you got this, why won't you fix it? But there's nothing I can do when you go on the floor. So that's how you start the day.
Yeah. So I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on this, but I do want to hear about what happened last week when you're in the middle of a floor debate. And what people may not understand about the House is that you are speaking and debating to each other, but you're not really. You're speaking through the speaker and then back down. But when the microphones are off or when you're not recognized by the speaker, there's a lot of activity and words that are going back and forth. What happened to you?
So to me, I was very frustrated with the speech that was given by Representative Kenyatta. I thought it was inappropriate. I disagree with it, but that's the disagreement. That's normal.
Okay.
Right? So, but I thought it was out of line, and I felt like, you know what? I am frustrated, like my people are frustrated, and after all, I represent them, and I'm going to let him know that I do not approve of this, and that's what I did. And
so
I did
did you ask to be recognized by the speaker?
No.
I see. You went over to him?
He was walking by, and I said, hey, and I let him know in strong terms that I did not like that at all. And from there, it got kind of rowdy. And
What does rowdy look like?
Rowdy looks like he had to be encouraged to not get closer to me, and then please go take a seat.
And what were you feeling? What are these inside? What was your
Don't
gut?
back down.
Yeah.
Don't back down. You're here to fight for your people.
Okay.
Let's fight for your. So there's this. I think as men, I think as leaders, we have, and I'm certain that some version of that was being, as how Representative Kenyatta felt. Like, don't back down. Like, we're here to fight for our people, and so that's kind of the on both sides. Yeah.
So words fly, things happen. Unfortunately, there is no, because this is happening informally, there's no transcription.
There's nothing.
And there's no video record of it. So it is your word, his word, everyone's word. So now you're a representative, but you're also a representative of Christ. You're a Christian, a believer. At what point, where does the restraint, where do you begin to feel a pullback to say, something, maybe I crossed the line, or maybe I shouldn't have said it this, or maybe the tone could be misunderstood? Because most of things aren't about what you say, they're about the aftermath and the misunderstanding.
Sure. So to me, the line felt clear. And the line was, say your piece on the floor when we're on the field of battle, so to speak.
Right.
This is where we are. This is where we use our strong language, and when we let each other know, hey, I don't approve of that, I disagree with that. And then once you leave the House floor, it's over. That's it.
Yeah.
You said your piece, you made your point, we're done. But that is maybe naive on my part, because we don't do that stuff in a vacuum. Like, even though, that's the way I view it, that's not the way that a lot of people do. So suddenly this becomes a subject for public discussion.
Right. So let's hit pause there. Alex, you've been an observer. You participated in recently on a really interesting issue at the township level about some chickens, and I read about you in the newspaper.
Yeah, it happened.
But it is the aftermath, isn't it? It is all about not the events that happened, but it's the interpretation. It's TikTok, it's Instagram. Right. And the temptation is there for anyone, especially believers, even pastors, to leverage that moment to sell some T-shirts, to sell some bumper stickers. I mean, he could be raising a lot of money right now. Right? That's how it works now in politics.
Right.
Where does faith begin to regulate those kinds of instincts without you feeling like a wimp or a loser because you didn't stand up and you didn't...
Right. There's ditches on both sides.
Yeah.
There's a ditch of being too free to hop into conflict. Scripture warns against, having a hunger, an unhealthy hunger for controversies, for division. But there's also a ditch on the side of being too restrained, sort of nicer than God mentality. And I bristle at that as well, even just recently working through 1 Timothy. Timothy, as a pastor, and you think, okay, he's a man of the cloth, right? Like, he's got to be this certain type of persona. He's told to fight the good fight of the faith.
Right.
And that's more than metaphorical. He was put there in ministry to oppose false teachers. So I think a robust Christian ethic can include being very direct and upfront with people and saying, that's wrong, and here are the reasons why. Here's the reasons why. And I think we have to start there and then think about, okay, how do I do that Christianly, but not backing down either?
Yeah. So how do you preserve, again, the relationship? So I think you've outlined appropriately that there's a time to take a stand, there's a right approach to taking a stand, there's a wrong way to take a stand, but then there's this protecting the sense of sincerity, authenticity. So when things happen in another house member's life, you can walk into that as a friend, as a brother, and have some credibility with them. How do you protect that credibility individually? Cameras are off, lights are off.
Right. That's where it gets tough, because so much of it is show, Jeff. There's a theater part of it. But what I've tried to do from the very beginning is, how would I want to be treated in this situation? And in this particular situation, one of the guiding principles is, if someone offends you, go to them directly. Get it worked out. Like, first go to them. And so I thought, well, if I was in their shoes, what would I want? And so this is why I reached out privately and said, hey, if you ever want to talk, let's talk. But we don't have to.
Right.
I'm not.
Which the scriptural outline really is that, right? You go
to the person first.
Right.
And because I think this business of prosecuting the case, so to speak, on social media is very ineffective. Maybe it's good for headlines and clickbait, but it's not good for relationships.
So I checked your social media, and you haven't. You have not used this to leverage. But I did ask your staff if it's all right to show me some of what they were saying. I'm not going to share any of them on the air, but
I would caution against.
How do you then not grow bitter towards people who do not understand you, who do not get that what you're doing is out of this well of principle or appropriate passion? How do you do that?
You have to triage the conversations. Some people with...
Like an ER.
Yeah, someone halfway across the country with a made-up name and a fake profile picture hurling an insult gets a certain level of attention, which is almost zero.
Right.
A constituent saying, hey, Representative Barger, what really happened? They get a different level of response. A colleague like Representative Kenyatta, well, he gets, I think, a special level of response, which is an invitation. If you ever want to talk about this, my door is open. So
we'll be watching for that, because that's such an encouraging thing to see that not only did you have some words on the floor, but you are not cutting off a relationship, and you are not sending fundraising letters out saying, please send me money because I'm getting picked on.
No. The goal is what we do on the floor is important, but it's not the most important thing we do.
Wow. What is the most important thing? We've got about 45 seconds. The most important thing in these political, once the battle and the issues are settled.
Romans 13 says that the role of a civil magistrate is to be a servant. The same word is used for deacon elsewhere in Scripture, a servant of God, to bear the sword justly, to enforce righteousness, to applaud what's good and to restrain what's evil. And so ultimately, every elected representative is there as a representative of God to do what's right, not according to man's standards, but according to God's standards, and to do so humbly in the fear of God. And so fight for what's right among your people, do so with an attitude of Christian grace, but don't back down.
Gentlemen, thank you. And Representative, thank you for being willing to talk about this publicly, because I think it helps a lot of us who are on the outside watching understand how should we respond and deal with these really tough questions.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you both. Well, coming up on Morning Light, millions of people are eligible to vote in the United States, but they choose not to. So is voting a right, a responsibility, or is it a privilege? As the deadline to register in Pennsylvania approaches, we want to know why it is so important to have your voice heard. A Pennsylvania election official is right here to explain why. Up next, you're watching Morning Light right here on Lighthouse TV.
Welcome back. The Pennsylvania general election is on Tuesday, November 4th. We will be casting ballots for state judges to school board members. And if you are not registered to vote, well, it's not too late to vote, to let your voice be heard. Joining me is Drasher, Lebanon County's Director of Elections and Voter Registration. Thanks for being with us.
My pleasure.
So Election Day is 1 month away. So let's talk about this. It's an off-year election. What does that mean?
Well, off-year election, that's not a great term, but that's what everyone uses. So you have your presidential election, then you have this year, which is a local election, a municipal election. So that would be races that are in your town and neighborhood. And then next year will be a governor's race, so that'll get a little bit more attention. Then the following year will be another municipal election. So in between the governor and the president, you have these years, and there are a ton of things on the ballot these years still.
So tell us what's on the ballot.
So this year we'll have local mayors, we'll have borough councils, we'll have township supervisors, tax collectors, school board members, things like that. So these are all races that are local to your community, and in order to run for them, you have to live in that town. So these are your neighbors that are on the ballot.
So this is a big election. It may be termed an off-year election, but the people that you're voting for are the people in your community that are making decisions on the different things you can and can't do.
Absolutely. So your vote this year is so valuable. These are races where you'll have literally races decided by 1 to 10 votes. So in a race, the turnout will probably be about 20%. So 4 out of 5 people won't be voting, and yet we're going to have races decided by a margin of a handful of votes. So these races are things that affect your life, like the school board members are deciding who gets hired, what teachers, what books go in the school. I know a lot of people are talking about that these days. Township supervisors are literally deciding what potholes get filled in your town. These are things that are very relevant to you, so we really need people to show up to vote.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us about the deadline.
The deadline to register to vote is October 20th in our county by 5 p.m. So by the close of business on October 20th. But if you'd like to request a mail-in ballot, you have an extra week. You have until the 28th.
How do you go about registering?
That's very easy. It only takes a few minutes, honestly, a few minutes. You can go to vote.pa.gov and do it online, or you can use a paper form. Either way, it gets emailed to us or comes into our office, and we process it that same day.
And there are other ways too. I know that when you sign up or you renew your license, you can register.
That's a very good point. Yeah, if you're getting your license renewed, whether you moved or it's just expired, at that point you'll have the option to update the voter registration office with your information as well.
And this is really our God-given right to vote.
It is. The right to vote in America is given a very special place. Like, you cannot lose that right to vote almost under any circumstances. And there are three ways to look at using that vote and how it's important. You have the concept first of the church. Should churches be involved in politics? And I know that's very controversial, and it probably should be controversial. It's a very touchy subject. But then you have the second part of that, which is, should members of the church be involved in politics in some way? And I think we have ample evidence in the Bible that points us to absolutely yes. There are kings, judges, magistrates, all throughout the Bible, and God uses them to put forth His kingdom and His will in this world. My men's group studying Daniel again, and there's a man who went into a pagan culture and rose to the very top of leadership and was respected by all and represented God wonderfully there. We have those examples. So yes, should members of the church be involved? I think it's yes, we should. But then on top of that, there's the third, your individual vote. Maybe you don't like politics. Maybe you bristle at the idea of politics. Hey, I understand. I work with it. I understand you want to keep arm's length away. But God has given you this right to vote. And you have this vote. And you have that one same vote that a billionaire has or someone who's destitute has. You have that same vote, that same power. The parable of the talents is the best example I can see, where you were given this talent. And at some point, you're going to have to account for what you've done with it. Are you going to bury it in the sand and do nothing with it? Or are you going to try to use it to represent God's kingdom here on earth? I assert that it is essential that you vote.
Yeah, so well said. So it is so important to register to vote and cast your ballot.
And we make it as easy as possible.
Yeah, that's right. So plenty of time to register to vote. The election is November 7th.
That's right.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Okay.
Once again, the deadline to register to vote is Monday, October 20th. For more information on how to register, visit pa.gov. Coming up next on Morning Light, so what does the Bible say about voting? Well, Pastor David Smith shares his thoughts. That's next. Stay with us. We'll be right back. In our last segment, you heard about some of the offices up for election on November 4th. So we wanted to know why it's so important for Christians to vote and what the Bible has to say. Morning Light panelist Pastor David Smith is here to share some insight. Pastor David, thanks for being with us. Let's talk about the election. Why is it important as Christians to vote?
Well, what's really interesting is, especially we as Western Christians are afforded an opportunity that our first century brothers and sisters would have never dreamed of. First century Christians could not participate in the elections of Rome because they weren't Roman citizens. So for what we have the privilege of being able to vote. And while you will not necessarily see the 11th commandment, thou shalt voteth, the KJV, but it's still our civic responsibility. I think it really has close ties to subduing the earth and being stewards over the earth, and what God has given us the responsibility for, not just the environment in a sense, but also for the affairs of the day, for the king and for those who are in authority over us. So it is incredibly important that we exercise our right and our privilege to prayerfully elect men and women who are going to represent our values and what we believe God would want for our country, our community.
And many of the candidates really, they lay out their values
Absolutely.
and what they stand for. So it's a matter of just taking some time and putting this on the list that, hey, this is something important. I need to do this.
Absolutely. 1 Corinthians 10:31 says, whatsoever you do, do all to the glory of God. So it is important for us to do our due diligence and truly examine, okay, what does this candidate teach? What does this candidate say? You can remember the time where there were pro-life Democrats. And I could really empathize with pro-life Democrats and say, hey, you know what, I like this person. I like what they're saying. I understand where they are. They were more moderate back in the day. That has radically changed today. So I think doing that fair assessment of a candidate and then praying, like, God, what would you have me do? What would you want? Where would you want me to cast my ballot? And I think, again, taking that responsibility seriously is really incumbent upon believers.
So you go to the polls, you vote, and you find out that your candidate was not elected. How do you pray for the opponent?
Well, I think you pray sort of a similar thing that you would pray for your candidate if your candidate won. Maybe you're offering more praises if your candidate won, but I think you pray that he makes or she makes good laws, is truly being led by the Spirit of God or being led by truths that are kind of transcendent of all faiths and all people, just doing the right thing. So I think you really pray that they stay strong, that they would be people of integrity. From what I understand, that there'd be a lot of temptation, maybe for things that aren't that are nefarious or that are not good for our country. So again, to be people of character. So pray for their strength. If they're not a believer in Christ, we pray for them to be saved, that they would come to know Christ, that they would understand who He is and have a personal relationship with Him and follow Him. I think we would pray that, again, that it would go well for them, that their families would be well. Just as we would pray for your pastor, in a sense, you would pray for this candidate, because in both cases, they're authority figures over you. And I would also pray for ourselves that we would adhere and we would honor this king, even though I disagree. I say king, but for us would be president or vice president, that we would honor them because they are God's appointed person, and that we would see it that way as opposed to just he's not the person or she's not the person that I wanted.
I know that at my church, our pastor prays, it doesn't matter which party the person who is leading the country, but it's a matter of just praying for our leaders, praying for all of them from the top all the way down.
Right, and that's the systematic approach. I mean, most of us don't even know our local officials. Maybe you know your mayor, but you don't know your city council. Or, Debra, what about your school board? People who are making decisions for children. All these offices that are positions of responsibility and authority matter. And I think it's important for us to know who's in our local community, obviously in our state and our federal level, but to know locally as well, to pray for them systematically. And I think it would be a good unifier for Christians, as opposed to simply lamenting or being angry that this person isn't doing what we want, or this person said this or did that. But let's come together and just cry out for them. I have found that when I am praying for my enemies, as Jesus commands, I have a softened position towards them. I am not as angry. The vitriol coming out of my mouth is lessened because I want to be compassionate towards them. I want to be merciful and kind to them, as opposed to simply, hey, I don't like them. I don't like their party. I don't like what they're doing. So, I want to jettison them out of my thinking. No, they ought to be coming before the throne of God often.
And it does make a difference, I think, when people who are not Christian and they see us praying for our opponents. I think it sends a very strong message.
I hope so, that is a witness for us that Debra, I love our country, and I think most of us do. And to be able to say, hey, I disagree with their policy, but I am surrendering and submitting to their authority because God has placed them there. And I don't think we hear that message from Christians enough. I think sometimes we see the exact opposite. It's not my candidate, so I'm going to shake my fist at him or her. That's just not the Christian response at all.
Pastor David, thanks so much for being with us.
You're very welcome.
Certainly a wonderful conversation. Again, Election Day is Tuesday, November 4th. In Pennsylvania, the polls open at 7 in the morning and close at 8 at night. Stay with us. We will be right back. Welcome back. Coming up tomorrow on Morning Light, we're all led to our faith in Jesus Christ in different ways. Some are brought up in the church, while others hear the gospel from a friend. This month, we will hear the faith journeys from some of our panelists and guests. And that's a look at what's coming up tomorrow on Morning Light. Now, Jeff, your closing thoughts.
That's so exciting to hear the backstory of the people on the panel. I'm excited for that. Well, early this morning, I traded messages with a friend of mine. He's a young law student and Israeli Defense Forces reservist. He's with the IDF. His voice and heart heavy with grief today. And I can't tell you his name. I can't show you his picture. But we've stayed in contact since I met him a few years ago in Israel. He told me when he received that gut-wrenching news, you remember it, 2 years ago today on October 7th, at 6:30 in the morning for him, when he woke up, his life changed forever. Before that day, he was an ordinary law student with a great sense of humor. He loved posting about his car washes and the music he loved and those crazy law school professors and family trips. It was in every way a pretty normal life. Then, like everyone else in his generation in Israel on both sides of this conflict, he went through cycles of rage and disbelief for his friends at the music festival, for his fellow soldiers. And then we remember 67,000 souls lost their lives on both sides of that ragged wall separating Gaza from Israel. If you have a friend on either side of this conflict, on either side of the wall in the Holy Land, today wouldn't be a bad day to check on them. Ask them how they're doing. Ask them what they're processing, how they're grieving, and how they're hoping. And then take a minute to pray, to beg God for peace. For Debra and the entire Morning Light team, I'm Jeff Kocman. Thanks for spending the day with us. Now go check on your neighbors, and we'll look for you back here, God willing, tomorrow morning.